Hi everyone, today we are going to do some systems of equations word problems, which are actually really useful types of problems to be able to solve in real life. So we're going to go back to using our DESC, D-E-S-C. So if you guys remember, the D in DESC stands for define your variables. The E stands for make your equations. And in this occasion, we're going to say equations because we're going to need to make two equations to solve for the two variables. And then the S stands for solve. And then the C is complete sentence. So that's always how we're going to finish these types of problems. So it is a word problem, so you want to answer it like you were talking to someone in real life. So here, let's look at this first problem together. It says, you purchase 5 pounds of apples and 2 pounds of oranges for $9. Your friend purchases 5 pounds of apples and 6 pounds of oranges for $17. Write a system of linear equations that represents this situation to find how much a pound of oranges and a pound of apples costs. So I'm going to underline this part. So you typically want to look for the question, and that will tell you how to define your variables. So since they want you to find how much a pound of oranges and a pound of apples costs, your variables are going to represent how much they cost. So let's use X and Y. So step one, let's say X equals cost of 1 pound of oranges. And let's say Y equals the cost of 1 pound of apples. So once again, we really look to our question to help us define the variables. If they're asking how much does a pound of oranges cost, X is the cost of a pound of oranges. How much does a pound of apples cost? Y equals the cost of a pound of apples. So now we're going to have to make our equations. But since we have two variables, we know that we need to use to make two equations to solve for them. Okay, let's start with this first sentence. You purchased 5 pounds of apples and 2 pounds of oranges for $9. So of that $9 you spent, some of it came from the apples. And the way that you calculate how much you owe at a grocery store is you take how many pounds you got and you multiply it by the cost per pound. So for example, if it was $1 a pound, you do 5 times 1. If it were $2 a pound, you do 5 times 2. So we take 5 and we multiply it by however much it costs for 1 pound. And then we're going to add that to however much we paid for the oranges. So we bought 2 pounds of oranges and they cost Y dollars, so it's 2 times Y. And if you add up those two costs, it totals $9 according to the prompt. Now we can use that second sentence. So it says 5 pounds of apples and 6 pounds of oranges cost $17. So you take the 5 pounds and you multiply it by the price per pound, so 5x. And then here you have 6 pounds of oranges, so you take 6 and you multiply it by the cost per pound, and that equals 17. So from here, we're going to move on to step 3, which is to solve. So here I see that we can use the elimination method. However, remember we want opposite coefficients. So I'm going to take that second equation, and I'm going to multiply both sides by -1. You could have done the same thing to the top equation. So we get 5x plus 2y equals 9, and negative 5x minus 6y equals negative 17. And now when we add vertically, our x's eliminate, and we're left with negative 4y equals negative 8. Divide both sides by -4, and we get y equals 2. And then we're going to substitute that back into one of our original equations, maybe this top one. So 5x plus 2 times 2, which is our y value, equals 9. Let's separate this out. And now just simplify. 5x plus 4 equals 9. subtract 4 on both sides, and we get, I'm going to move up here, 5x equals 5, divide by 5, and x equals 1. So for this one, we're going to actually write out our answer as a complete sentence, and we're going to pretty much answer the question, how much is a pound of oranges? So I look back at my variable. X represents the cost for 1 pound of oranges. So you have to know which one is which, and luckily we defined it here. X is oranges. So we can say oranges cost $1 per pound. Apples, which is Y, cost $2 per pound. And that is our final complete answer. So once again, we defined our variables, we made our equations, we solved, and we wrote a complete sentence as our final answer. All right, let's move down to number 2. So here, we're going to follow the same process, but it's not as written out for us. So this one says a 100-point test contains a total of 20 questions. The multiple choice questions are worth 3 points each, and remember it's a 100-point test, and the short response questions are worth 8 points each. So there's 2 different types of questions. There's the multiple choice and there's the short response. So this says, write a system of linear equations that represents this situation to find, I'm going to underline this part, how many multiple choice questions and how many short response questions are on the test. So remember, our variables are going to represent the question. So first they ask, how many multiple choice questions are there? So we'll say x equals number of multiple choice. And they also ask, how many short response questions are there? So we say y equals number of short response. And now they would like us to write the system of linear equations that represents this situation. So we know that there are 20 questions on the test. If x is the number of multiple choice and y is the number of short response, I know that if you add up those two, it should equal 20. So one of our equations could be x plus y equals 20. Now the next one, we can use this piece of information that it's a 100-point test. Now, some of those 100 points came from multiple choice questions, and the multiple choice questions are worth 3 points each. So you essentially take 3 and you multiply it by the number of multiple choice questions you have. But some of those 100 points also came from short response questions, which are worth 8 points. So you take 8 points and you multiply it by however many short response questions you have. And if you add up all of those points, so remember these are the points from multiple choice, these are the points from short response, they should add up to 100 because it's a 100-point test. Now here they only asked us to write the system of linear equations, they didn't ask us to solve, so we're done. Okay, let's look at this next problem. It says a business rents bicycles and inline skates. Bicycle rentals cost $25 a day, and inline skate rentals cost $20 a day. The business has 20 rentals today, and they make $455. How many bicycle rentals and inline skate rentals did the business have today? So remember, our question will help us define the variables. They ask how many bicycle rentals. So let's say x equals number of bike rentals. And they ask how many inline skate rentals. So let's say y equals number of skate rentals. Okay, so now we need to make our system of equations. So first here it says that there are 20 rentals today. So some of those rentals are bikes, some of those are skates, and if you add them up, it should equal 20. So we can say x plus y equals 20. Now the other piece of information we have is how much money they made. So they made $455. Some of that came from renting bicycles. So you get $25 for each bike. So that's 25 times X, the number of bikes. Now, some of that $455 also came from the inline skates, which give you $20 per rental. So 20 times Y, which is the number of skate rentals. Now, if you add up the money from bikes and the money from skates, you should get $455. Now, this one we are going to finish solving. So I look at this and I think we're going to do the elimination method. So let's try to eliminate, how about our Y's? So if I want to eliminate the Y's, I can multiply the top equation by -20. And I'm going to rewrite both equations over here. So that gives us -20x minus 20y equals -400. And then the bottom equation stays the same. Okay, now I can add vertically. My y's cancel out. And I'm left with 5x equals 55. Divide by 5 on both sides, and I get x equals 11. And I can substitute that, let's say, into the first equation right here. So instead of saying x plus y equals 20, I'm going to say 11 plus y equals 20. Subtract 11 from both sides, and you get y equals 9. So remember, the last part of using our desk is writing our answer as a complete sentence. And here is where it's really important that you define your variables, because you need to know what your answer means. If you just say x equals 11, but you don't know what x represents, that's going to be a problem. So x is the number of bike rentals. So we would say there were 11 bike rentals. And so y represents the number of skate rentals, so we say 9 skate rentals. And that's our final answer. And notice it answers the question that was asked. The question said, how many bike rentals and inline skate rentals did the business have? And this answer is very complete, and it answers both parts. Okay, so why don't you pause the video and give number 4 a try on your own. Remember, use the question to help you define your variables. Okay, let's have a look. So since they asked you to find the number of jars of jam, I said x equals the number of jams. And the number of packages of bread, I said y equals the number of bread mixes. So remember, use the question to help you define your variables. So I used this first piece of information that there are 8 items in the basket, and I said x plus y equals 8, because the number of jams plus the number of bread mixes should equal 8. Then I used the cost of the total gift basket and the individual costs. So I see that the gift basket cost $45. Some of that came from the cost of jams, which cost $6 each, so I said 6 times the number of jams. And some of that $45 came from the bread mix cost, so that's 5 times the number of bread mixes. So 6x plus 5y equals 45. And then I decided to use elimination, so I multiplied the top equation by -5, leaving me with this, and then I added vertically, x equals 5, and then I substituted into the first equation, y equals 3, and then using my defined variables, I could see that there are 5 jams and 3 bread mixes in the gift basket. All right, same idea. Please pause the video and give number 5 a try. We'll go over the answer in just a few seconds. Okay, so since the question was find the number of lilies and tulips, the variables represent x equals the number of lilies and y equals the number of tulips. So notice that it represents the number of them and not the cost. So using the fact that there are 12 flowers total, I can say x plus y equals 12, because the lilies plus the tulips should equal 12. And then I know that the total bouquet cost $32. Some of that cost came from lilies. So you do 3 times however many lilies you bought. Some of that cost came from tulips. So I'd do 2 times the number of tulips we bought. And if you add up those 2 costs, it should equal 32. I did elimination again. I multiplied the top equation by -2, added vertically, and I got x equals 8. And then I substituted that into the first equation to get y equals 4. So there are 8 lilies and 4 tulips in the bouquet. All right, that is all for today's lesson. Thank you so much for watching.